Really appreciate everyone taking the time, and I'm super excited to bring you all through the DeSci playbook today. All right, just one more minute. All righty, cool. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. All right, well, we're going to have a information densely packed presentation for you all today, followed by some Q&A at the end. And so at any point, if you guys have any questions, feel free to just prepare them. You can share them on whatever streaming platform you are in, and then our team will make sure that we can go ahead and share any of the questions that get presented. So I'm going ahead and sharing my screen here. Actually, let me see. I think we're all set. Let's go full screen. Perfect. All right, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to BioProtocol. This is the DeSci playbook. Now, today you're going to be learning everything there is to know about DeSci from a 101 perspective and how to use it to your advantage. I'm building this presentation in such a way so that anybody, regardless of their understanding experience within either crypto, science, or DeSci, can come away understanding how to use DeSci to their advantage. By the end of this conversation, you should understand a few things. The first is how BioProtocol can help you fund your scientific research. Next, strategies of building attention and awareness for your science. This is extremely important, as awareness and attention are the key in order to get your research funded and accelerated. Then you'll hear about other successful projects that have used DeSci in order to accelerate their work. And finally, you'll hear and learn about how DeSci is faster and easier than government grants. We also think, and we've seen from the founders in our ecosystem, that DeSci is actually a superior model to venture capital as well. And we hope that those of you who are interested from a startup perspective consider DeSci as a potential avenue for your work as well. Before we get into all of that, I'm going to give you a little bit about myself so you know why you should listen to me. My name is James. I'm the chief scientist here at BioProtocol. I've got a background in chemistry, and I funded my own research through government grants during my time at academia. So I know what it's like to have to go through the arduous process of writing grants, applying, hope that you get funding, finding out months later. And I've also done the other side of the playbook, where I've even spun out my research into startups that got funded by venture capitalists, and I went through the Silicon Valley Accelerator Program, Y Combinator, and even spent some time as a venture capitalist. So I've seen all of the possible ways that science can get financing through government grants, through the traditional Silicon Valley startup pipeline, and now at Bio, we're building a new way, a third way, called DeSci, in order to fund scientific research. We're doing this because we think that there's more problems that people need to solve than we have talented people solving them. When we queried scientists, we learned that they spend way too much of their time actually raising funds and not enough time doing science. And we found a way to help, to use blockchain to help. So DeSci is at the intersection of blockchain and science. These two industries intersect in various ways. There are different types of DeSci related projects. anywhere from incentivized peer review through open access publishing. There are some projects working on data provenance and ownership, but for the sake of this conversation, we're going to focus on the last one here, which is funding scientific research. This is what we specialize here at Bio. Now, in order to understand how this works, I'm going to give you just a very high level breakdown of how blockchains function. We're going to work our way from blockchains all the way through actually funding that science. So for those who don't know, blockchains are basically their public ledgers. And these public ledgers are open and visible by anybody. They're a permissionless network where you can use any device to go in and inspect this public ledger, where everyone that's inspecting it or hosts this ledger has a copy of it themselves. What we've realized and we've discovered is that you can actually represent intellectual property or a scientific idea, a scientific hypothesis on this ledger. In the same way that you could encrypt a transaction, or sorry, you could post a transaction, rather, you can also post a piece of material, a scientific hypothesis or a piece of intellectual property. And using smart contracts, which is basically the software paradigm that these systems run on, we can stamp your idea or your intellectual property into this public ledger. The process of doing so, in the end, creates what we call an intellectual property NFT or an IP NFT. This is a one-of-one of your scientific idea or your hypothesis. And you can kind of think about this as the digital equivalent or the crypto equivalent of the analog USPTO provisional application for a patent. This is all done through a public ledger where you maintain ownership of your intellectual property and you post it publicly the same way you would post your provisional patent over to the USPTO. So as a summary, an idea or piece of IP stamped on the blockchain mints us an IP NFT. Now, when these ideas are put together, in some cases, actually a provisional patent is also filed underneath the hood. We can explain all the logistics and the legalities of that later on, but at a high level, what you need to walk away with here is knowing is that we're minting these intellectual property NFTs on a blockchain. Now, once we have these IP NFTs created, we developed a technology in order to turn these via tokenization into what we call IP tokens. IP tokens, as you can see here, are basically fractionalized small little bits that represents the initial intellectual property idea, concept, or hypothesis that you have as an initial scientist. And we can fractionalize these down to as small basis as you want. Typically, we would turn these into 100 million or a billion tokens. And then finally, what we do at Bio is actually launch these intellectual property tokens to the market that the market purchases in order to help you raise for your scientific research. Okay, when we put all of it together, the process is actually rather simple. Scientists have a novel idea or a hypothesis. Using the blockchain as infrastructure, we go ahead and we mint this intellectual property NFT. Bio transforms this into intellectual property tokens, right? These are the fractionalized intellectual property NFTs. We launch these IPTs on the Bio platform, on our launchpad, and then participants buy them in order to fund your idea. It's a simple concept, but it's extremely powerful. You get to perform your scientific research based on the capital that you've received by selling a fraction of your idea, and buyers get to participate in the upside in case your research goes on to make massive novel impacts. People here that participate are hoping that you can create the next Pfizer or Moderna mRNA vaccine, that you can develop a cure to cancer, or frankly, that they just really want to support the piece of research that you're working on and they think that it is deserving of a shot on goal. Our dream or our vision here at Bio is that we can take any research project, any kind of a concept, and actually fund that through our infrastructure, through our platform to develop, and through the research experience novel intellectual property and novel data that essentially backs the value of that IP. So you can imagine that through the experimental process, we've de-risked or we've validated these initial hypotheses, and in turn, that increases the value of that intellectual IP. From there, there's many different pathways to monetizing the IP, anywhere from creating consumer products or commercial products. This research can be spun out into an individual company that could go on and raise its own financing. It can be licensed to someone through a joint development agreement or through an IP sale, or the asset can even be acquired by another entity that would like to take it and commercialize it from there. We envision a system where these proceeds then get to flow back to the initial project's treasury, where the team can decide what they want to do from there, the team being you all as the scientists. Perhaps you have a next wave of innovation that you'd like to take on and a next piece of research you'd like to fund. Then you have the resources to go ahead and do that. So the question is, how do we get here? How do we get to this fantastic flywheel of having research funded and then commercialized using crypto? The first step after creating your initial project concept is turning your idea into what we call a project page here at Bio. You can kind of think about this as like a Kickstarter homepage. And what it does is it packages up your vision of what you want to build. Each project has their own project page. If you'd like to, you can visit bio.xyz, or sorry, app.bio.xyz to see what some of these project pages look like. I'm giving you here an example of Neuron Gale. Neuron Gale is an IPT, or intellectual property token, that is yet to be launched. They're on our launchpad and they'll be launched in a matter of weeks. And they're focused on small molecules that can help treat neuroinflammation from an Alzheimer's mouse model. I picked this research to just showcase the kind of projects that we love to support. And every single project, when it comes onto our platform, needs to have a few key points to help express and help the market understand what it is that the hypothesis is. As you can see here, we start off with a short paragraph that basically explains what the project is looking to finance and some of the background scientific research that would go in to validate this as an appropriate target, as an appropriate research project. We also encourage projects to generate an image and use that as an anchor for folks to associate with this research project. We encourage folks to also create social media, whether it's Twitter, LinkedIn, Discord, a website, so on and so forth, just as supplementary background materials, the same way you would if you had a Kickstarter for a traditional product that you wanted to launch into the market. Next, and what I would like to think is the most important, is the research hypothesis. This is the section where scientists get to show off what it is that they are really thinking the impact could be if the research goes the way they want to. As scientists, we have a lot of really great ideas, and this is your opportunity to anchor what your ideas are into the way it can make an impact in the real world. So as you can see here, we have a summary about the mechanism of how this novel molecule could potentially help in Alzheimer's disease, a summary of what the problem is, and a reminder to the potential market impact this could make if successful, a brief breakdown of how their solution works, mechanism there, the current status of this molecule. And so in your case, you would have whatever preclinical or perhaps even experimental data that you've done. This could even be, frankly, if it is a next generation molecule, the basis upon which you've decided that this molecule would be a good hit or a good target, even if no experimental data has yet to be collected. I'll touch on this a little further, but we're open to research projects that are even at the very earliest of stages. And then finally, what the commercial potential could be, once again, if this project was to really take off. The key here is to paint a kind of picture of what your research would look like if it was to actually succeed at the limit of its potential. We also encourage you to put together a section that describes your team and focusing on why you all are the right folks to bring this together. We've seen teams small and large, and the thing that makes the most impact is the credibility and the experience that you all have from your research history to your vision, what you've accomplished, who you've worked with, so on and so forth, in order to give the market understanding of why you are going to be successful at bringing this project to life. We include a roadmap for you to explain what the next steps of your research are, and then also recommended readings, such that folks who want to dive deep into the research can understand how you got to this understanding, how you got to this hypothesis, to this piece of IP, and they can go ahead and kind of follow the breadcrumb trail themselves as validation that, okay, really you are onto something. Once you've done all of this, you have basically a completed bio app page. Once again, this is what the Kickstarter equivalent would look like for us in order to get your project visible and ready to launch on our platform. From there, we actually help you build awareness with our marketing team. We provide you a marketing guide, a content calendar. We help host live streams where you get to explain your project to our network of investors, contributors, and interested parties. We'll do X, formerly known as Twitter threads, and marketing from our accounts to actually give you guys reach and make sure people understand what work it is that you're doing. And we'll notify participants in our network to get ready for your upcoming launch. Now, we do have a really large following on X, formerly known as Twitter, but the best projects go ahead and they also tap their own network to bring in their own attention and their own following, as we find that the right mixture is both a crypto and a scientific audience together. From here, you are ready to move forward towards a launch. So as a recap, we've minted your IP NFT, turned it into an IPT, built your bio app page, all your marketing materials are set to go, and now it's time for you to launch your token and actually fundraise for your work. The fundraising happens in 3 distinct steps here at Bio. The first process is an upfront raise. That gives you capital to get going on your research. The second is milestone payments. As you continue to grow and your research progresses and you generate evidence or data that you're cooking, you're working, new milestones unlock. And then the final is a continuous endowment for your research. Really excited to share how these work. So first, the upfront raise. A typical project on our platform will raise anywhere from 50 to 100K on launch. And what this looks like is folks will come in and they'll participate by paying Ethereum or USDC. These are both crypto tokens in exchange for a fraction of your intellectual property token. And as a result, you're able to get that 50 to 100K upfront. We'll work together to determine what the right amount of funds are for each one of your projects. Each project is unique, we understand that. So you can think about us as your trusting hand along the way. You don't have to figure it out on your own. We'll be there for you. And this can close in either a number of minutes or a number of days. And that's impacted by the quality of your marketing materials, your ability to describe what you do very clearly on the bio app page, and how much preparation you've gone ahead and invested into your project. Once again, we've seen some of these literally close in minutes, or some of them take a number of days. All this really depends on how much effort you put into it. And of course, we give you all the playbooks and all the guidance on how to do this correctly. Then, once the bids have reached that minimum threshold, anywhere from 50 to 100K, those funds are made immediately accessible to you. So you can get work on your R&D immediately. Just to summarize this really quick, you can imagine, once again, by applying to Bio, we mint your IP NFT, we build your bio app page. This will happen as quickly as you're ready to go. We have your marketing materials all set up, once again, as quickly as you're ready to run. And we launch your token for a fundraise. That means that you could get to doing your research funded on our platform in a number of days. It's all bounded by how quickly you want to run. Okay, so now you've raised this upfront amount of 50 to 100K on launch. You might wonder what happens next. Well, we've programmed in and built milestone-based funding unlocks for your research. So here I have an assumption of an initial raise of 50,000, where we sell 10% of the token allocation. From here, we reserve another 15% that'll be sold under cumulative unlocks as your project continues to make progress. So you can see here the initial milestone, the first payment that is given to you on day 0 is 50K at a starting FDV, or fully diluted valuation, of 500,000. Now, you get to begin your research, and by sharing updates, posting content of you in the lab, we've seen that projects can accrue value. And if you double, all of a sudden we'll be able to take out another 30K from the market, and you receive actually another 31K for your scientific research. We've set up these programmatic milestone payments to continue to enable and accelerate your research, so that way researchers are able to receive up to $1 million for their research while still maintaining the majority of their project. Just to help you visualize what this looks like, on day 0, we go ahead and you raise that, once again, 50,000 for 10%. Then as the project continues to progress, we see additional sales unlock, allowing you to continue to fuel and advance your research and hopefully make more discoveries as we continue to see progress happen in the lab. So, as I mentioned, as you continue to do your work, you update the market, you show how the science is going, and your value will grow, and these new milestones will unlock. This rewards you and incentivizes you to continue to share updates and progress from the lab. Don't forget, you can raise up to $1 million if your project continues to grow, and your lab will get paid with every single milestone. There's no need to wait for this final milestone to hit. As you reach these different levels, these funds will become immediately available to you and your lab, so you can continue to do the important research that you are trying to bring to life. All right, and then the last section is trading fees. This is how we get to create a continuous funding stream for your research lab. Every time someone buys or sells your token, a 1% fee is charged on that buy or that sell. We take these fees and we give them back to your project. This means that every time you generate more attention and more engagement for your work, the amount of trading fees that you generate increases. So we let you basically monetize the attention that you're able to generate for your work. We've seen that on average, 4 to 5 figures worth of fees are raised by projects, and this again continues to fuel your idea. I hope that at this point, you can see that we've done everything we can to stack the deck to make it as easy as possible for scientists to raise funding, and to give you as many wins and shots on target in order to continue to bring new capital in that lets you leverage it to make scientific advancements. So at this point, you're off to the races. It's your responsibility to show some monthly progress updates on how the science is going. You can show pictures from your lab, or you can even share lab meetings if you want to record them or send transcripts. But you can now turn the attention and the value of your research into capital, so that way you can continue to go and push forward. I just wanted to share a quick set of screenshots of what it looks like for the projects in our ecosystem to showcase what kind of research they do, right? I'd like for you all to understand how easy and approachable this is. You're going to simply do the same science you're used to, but now you have an added bonus of when you communicate and when you see new kinds of milestones being hit internally inside your lab, you get rewarded for sharing these with the community. We've seen the best projects post, weekly, if not monthly updates with just what's been going on in the lab. I know that for some scientists, it might be counterintuitive, but people actually really care. And you can think about your community, the people that buy your tokens, as an extension of your personal weekly lab group meeting. They'd love to be involved, and they'd love to hear how it's going. And in many cases, they can actually even help you advance your own research. So that was a high level of the DeSci playbook. At this point, you should understand how bioprotocol can help you fund your research, how building attention and awareness around your science should work, and how that can help you actually further fuel your R&D, and how DeSci is faster and easier than government grants. As your progress and your credibility build, you continue to unlock more funds and even the potential of an opportunity to launch other projects or partner with other projects at bioprotocol. We did this because we believe that it reminds me of a quote where it's easier to invent Bitcoin and blockchain than it is to reform the Federal Reserve of the United States. This is a quote by a famous, he was actually the previous CTO of Coinbase, Balaji, who was actually, he has a STEM background, I believe it was in bioinformatics before he got into crypto. And very similarly, we believe that it's easier to build a new way to fund scientific research than it is to try and fix a broken system. And we don't think that it's worth scientists just trying to hope that their grants get funded. We think that science is the most important vehicle that brings the future closer to the present, and we want to help make that funded and possible and accelerated for all scientists. At Bio, we help you every step of the way. We'll provide logistics and operation support. We can help you with social media and give you advice on marketing. We give you the access to our public token launchpad for fundraising. You get access to our global community of investors and early adopters and partners that want to fund scientific research. We do all the technical integrations. We mint the IP NFTs, the IPTs, so on and so forth. We help you with any legal incorporation that you might need, the crypto token economics that I described earlier, and even we can build incentive systems for folks. And finally, we are the leading DeSci network and ecosystem in the world that have helped over 60 projects get launched in this way. Here's just a small sneak peek at the larger bio ecosystem. We love all kinds of different projects, especially those that are interdisciplinary. We funded things from gut health, kidney health, spine research, fertility, psychedelic medicine, stem cell research, hair loss, long COVID, quantum biology, longevity, and the list goes on and on and on. We are super excited about frontier research. And we have a massive network and a huge list of experts that are here and excited to help move your projects forward. All right, I hope that you've come away with some valuable insights along what it's like to actually get your research funded. If you're interested, you can scan the QR code right here in order to apply. There'll be a form that you can fill out. And by filling it out, it'll actually get you 80 to 90% of the way through creating your bio app page. We ask the same questions that are going to go right into that Kickstarter-esque page that we use for bio. It's going to go to market. I'll just pause here for a second and give you all a second to read that QR code. And then I have some surprises coming up right after this. All right, so time for the bonuses. The first is I'm going to share our new type of asset that we've been working on here at Bio. Then you'll hear from Ethan Perlstein. He's the co-founder of Curetopia. He's a founder in our ecosystem that's been focused on curing rare genetic diseases. And then we'll have some time for Q&A at the end. So once again, get your questions ready, and you can feel free to share them on whatever platform you're tuning in. So we've seen an emerging industry around artificial intelligence and tooling for science. There's a growing economy around how we can accelerate and actually build automation for scientists. And Bio has developed what we call our AI agent stack to help builders build these tools. Here you can see just 3 of the AI tools that have been launched already. One focused on men's reproductive health, a second, a digital clone of Aubrey de Grey, and a third focused on the gut microbiome. I'm going to focus on Aubrey for a moment. This is a digital clone of Aubrey de Grey that's been trained on a ton of his scientific papers and even some emails that he's contributed to us as well. And as a digital clone of him, it's available 24/7 for his lab and other scientists that would like to understand Aubrey's view of SENS and longevity research in his vision. In fact, this tool is being used actively for their RMR2 study and helps them not only design experiments, but find flaws in their thinking, and helps to host a source of truth for all the literature that they ever have used and would like to reference in the future. We've actually also created our first ever intellectual property token, an IPT, that was co-developed by scientists in pairing with Aubrey AI, showing a first step of this human to machine symbiosis. This IPT was focused on stem cell research, and we think that other scientists will also benefit from using AI tools. And so if you have an interest in either building on top of AI tools or using them yourselves, this is also an angle that you can go ahead and apply to Bio with. That'll be available in our application QR code that you can scan. Our vision here is that as scientists continue to train these AI agents by curating data, refining the outputs, sharing more scientific information, and using them actually to generate ideas and design experiments, we can improve them over time, actually fund some of these experiments, see projects, compounds, different kinds of chemistries get spun out, and then the data gets to fuel and continue to reinforce the quality of the AI. Once again, if this is something that you're interested in, please go ahead and scan this QR code. You can go ahead and apply. If you are not able to, you can go to bio.xyz/scientists to read more and find our application there as well. All right, now we have time for some Q&A, but first we'll get to hear from Ethan Perlstein. He's one of the co-founders of Curetopia, a now DeSci OG focused on curing rare genetic diseases. Ethan, how you doing, man?
Excellent.
Nice to hear from you. So maybe we can just start from the beginning. I think you have a long history of being a researcher. Maybe you can just kind of share where you got your start, and then we can kind of flip through the chapters of how you went from, not involved with DeSci at all to now being completely DeSci pilled and one of the biggest builders in DeSci.
Yeah, I got my PhD in 2006. I didn't really, I knew there were biotech startups. I didn't see myself in that role. I was shaped by professors who were my role models and my instructors and my guiding lights. I didn't have any. I did have an example of a biotech entrepreneur in the extended family, but I didn't connect the dots. I guess I just thought I was a scientist and didn't think much more of it. And then I did this crowdfunding on on a project to understand how methamphetamine works in the mammalian brain, inspired by Breaking Bad, which was a very big show at the time. And and I was at that transition point between academia and becoming a founder, or realizing I was a founder, I guess. And I did this crowdfund, raised 25K, which at the time was a record for at least a month or two for a science project on a crowdfunding site. I mean, remember, Kickstarter only started a few years. This was in 2012, so Kickstarter only started a few years before that. Anyway, so I got a taste for marketing. I leaned into the Breaking Bad imagery and other things, and that was part of how we ended up, raising the money. Then it was much harder to actually do the science because I had to work with the real institution, with the real scientist, and deal with real stuff, and that was not something we talked about in the marketing campaign for the crowdfund. But I saw what it was like to market science. I saw what it was like to raise money relatively quickly and in ways where there were no other sources for that money, even though it was like still kind of small dollar amount, but not nothing. Right? 25K wasn't nothing back in 2012. So I guess, yeah, that all was the backdrop for me to realize that I had been a founder all along, and that I just didn't know how to apply my science, and didn't know what problems would make me interested as a scientist, but also make for a good business. And then, one fateful day, met a rare disease parent, and that kind of changed the course of my career.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you cite this like crowdfunding moment as a big unlock for you. Maybe you could just share a little bit about what that taught you and sort of what it opened up in your brain, because I think there's a lot of scientists perhaps sitting at home that are like, oh yeah, crowdfunding, how could that ever work, right? They're like mired in doubt around why there would ever be anyone interested in giving them money to do science. That it's only the government that can, provide grants. Citizens can't help.
Yeah, so I'll tell you the whole secret story, I guess, or all. But I mean, I talked about it at the time. I used Twitter. I only had 1,000 followers at the time. I used Twitter to promote it. I had a website. I commissioned a video. I paid out of pocket. So, like in a lot of things, you realize in the fundraising world, in the not so-called nonprofit or fundraising world, you have to actually foot a lot of the bills or a lot of costs, and you hope that you make it up in donations, basically. So, I paid like, I believe it was a couple of grand to get this custom animation, and it was sick, right? And without that video, like it wouldn't have, it wouldn't work. So I realized from other crowdfunding campaigns, you can't just roll out there, and no other science project had raised this much because they all kind of were academics who were using academic. It was like, that concept of skeuomorphic that Chris Dixon talks about. Like they were taking a grant and then just putting it on a website because they were like, oh, that's how you do crowdfunding for science, right? You just take the grant and copy paste it, and then someone's going to read it. It's like, no, dumbass. Like you're going to have to basically strip all that detail away, a few highlights, maybe you link to some appendix or whatever offsite, and then you have a slick video. And then that's the formula. And I was like, okay. And I just accepted that. And a lot of scientists at the time were just like, no, that's below me, beneath me, or whatever. And then I was just hungry and desperate enough. And so I was like, let's go. And I'd been a super postdoc at Princeton. So I had,
super postdoc
compared to like regular, postdocs, I actually had, a decent income to live in New York City. So
Did they give you a cape?
No, they did not. But I could have gotten one in Times Square if I really wanted one. But yeah, I mean, I had like some disposable income, so I could like pay for the video. I could also, I also studied a lot of crowdfunding campaigns and was like, what works? And realized quickly, oh yeah, you have to get essentially 20% or so of your target in the first day to establish viability. Otherwise, you're going to wither and die on the vine. And so I had like basically a friends and family round lined up and prepared. But then I also realized you're going to get a surge at the end, but you had to get close enough. You had to get at least to 50% of your total by the last few days. Otherwise, you were also deemed as you're going to run out of steam. So I ended up I realized from getting press or that journalists were interested in this, I ginned up a lot of press. So I got written up in The Economist and in Wired and in Nature, like all these top journals and press outlets wanted to write it, were captivated by the story. And because it was like Breaking Bad for real, Ivy scientist, goes to the internet to raise money for idea and uses Walter White, imagery. So people wrote about it, and it got a lot of, and so yeah, it was amazing to see my name in The Economist. And like, I don't really give a fuck about that outlet now, but at the time it was like super cool to see like this thing that everybody valued, like, oh my God, there's my name. So, that meant, we kind of over 2-month-long auction basically, or a crowdfunding campaign, we got pretty close. And in the last 12 hours, it was insane. I mean, I remember sitting there, with kind of my fiance at the time, and just like my phone blowing up because boom, $200, $500, $100, and then just like it blew past the thing, and I was just like, I couldn't believe it because I thought we were just going to fall short, and I'd have to maybe put up more cash and be like, shit. Then anyway, so I learned a shit ton from that, and I dissected that, did a huge postmortem on all that data, posted it on my website at the time, my blog. And just, was very open science about everything. And yeah, but that taught me some really key lessons about marketing, about, if you're going to be a scientist CEO, you should actually run marketing. You shouldn't outsource that to anybody else but you. It's got to come from you, and learn some other, I think, key lessons, founder lessons, actually. It's good old times, good old days.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that definitely set you up to take advantage of the DeSci wave and to be massively successful here. I mean, we've taken a lot of the learnings that other projects have gone through in our Launchpad, and so with each and every new project that launches, we refine that marketing, that go-to-market playbook, even more and more and more and more. And it was great to see that you kind of already had an intuition for that going in as an independent. I'm glad that through seeing your launch, other projects launch, we get to continue to refine what that strategy is and kind of hand that off to the next generation of builders. So maybe in that vein, we can talk about what your journey was like actually going from there, because I know that there's a bunch of interesting turns along the way to discovering and sort of getting DeSci pilled yourself, right?
Yeah.
The whole talk is about the DeSci playbook. How did you come across DeSci and take advantage of it?
Yeah, I mean, it was basically, I think probably Paul reached out to me sometime during, I guess, the early day. Well, maybe he reached out to me initially before the pandemic, but
Mhm.
I was really busy. And then maybe reached out again, or definitely reached out again, maybe in 2021, something like that. And I finally had some bandwidth to connect. Um, and then, yeah, we had a call and then realized, okay, and I was independently getting into, I was following Chris Dixon and, you
Mhm.
know, read, write, own, and just like gobbling up all this decentralization philosophy, and obviously knew about DeFi, and DeFi everyone was talking about DeFi at the time, and so I didn't think of DeSci, I thought of DeBi, decentralized biotech.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
I kind of latched on to this idea that, and I was doing some early tweets. I don't remember anyone else really tweeting about this in, let's say, January 21 or
Mhm.
that period, and saying, hey, we have to, scientists have to lean into this DeFi thing and like learn from it. I didn't have any brilliant ideas, but I knew we had that this is something to pay attention to. And then someone at some point mentioned DeSci. I saw it, either Gary Tan did, or Gary Tan's
Mm.
feed is the first place I saw it, I want
Yeah.
to say. But then I was like, fuck, I wish I had come up with DeSci instead of DeBi. So dumb. Anyway, so yeah, so I was already smoking all this stuff, and but I knew about crypto for years, and I just wasn't sure what kind of business you would build, how you would actually build a biotech on chain. It felt very distant at that time, but kept following molecule, and then eventually bio, and then honestly, like it was you joining bio that just convinced me, okay, this is legit enough. I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's when, the pill had been kind of, tucked here, and then finally
Fully
swallowed it.
taken.
And finally swallowed it after a few years. And, but yeah, even then it was like, DeSci Berlin 24
Mhm.
was sort of like where I kind of first hinted at what was going to become Curetopia. Maybe it was like called Rare DAO as a
Yeah.
shitty placeholder at the time, but
I love Curetopia. Yeah.
yeah, no, me too. So yeah, so I think that kind of the pre-seed of Curetopia, debuted on Berlin, in like June of 24, and then yeah, and then you asked me where you want, or you tell me where should we go next in this journey.
Well, I think maybe we can talk about what the actual like progress has been like from when you realized, okay, you had this idea that rare genetic diseases are underfunded, undervalued by the market. They have no um, easy pathway towards being valued either by traditional venture capitalists or by, like government grants for them are so limited because the number of folks that can support it are so small. And then frankly, even biopharma doesn't care because the ends are too tiny, right? And so realizing that you're kind of in this nexus of a nowhere zone, and then how,
Say nexus. I think the other word for it is the Bermuda Triangle.
there you go, a Bermuda Triangle of unfortunate circumstances. And frankly, the people that suffer here are the people that have rare genetic diseases. But then you're able to discover that actually maybe the internet cares. Maybe people who are like risk on science curious crypto participants might want to give you a shot here. Maybe you can map out a little bit about what the struggles were first, trying to get some financing, and then we can talk a little bit about how crypto helped fill that gap.
Well, rare disease parents were sort of left to just, I don't know, sink or swim. And when they did raise money, it was really hard. It was bake sales. It was stuff like that.
Hmm.
And then I knew that there were going to be, and found them and worked with, higher resourced families, well-to-do families.
Hmm. Hmm.
And yeah, eventually just came to the conclusion it would be great if we could find a way to democratize the funding, the fundability of each rare disease, because right now it's just so random which one gets showered with attention and which one afflicts a billionaire's family versus a pauper's family.
Totally.
So ironically, I thought, crypto DeSci could be this kind of democratizing force compared to TradSci, at least,
Hmm.
where these folks are just abandoned, completely left, essentially left for dead. Economic,
Yep.
pharmacoeconomically speaking, they're left for dead because
Hmm.
no one sees a way to make money. So that was kind of, Curetopia was born out of that excruciating need, and like after spending 10 years grinding with families and figuring out there's only so many wealthy families that have rare diseases that can have a lot of other boxes on that need to be checked. It's just not going to be a way to solve this problem other than being a super concierge personalized medicine business, which we'll get back to that. but yeah, so yeah, Curetopia, and then smart contracts, all these things just made so much sense. People in rare are like degens. They want stuff right now. They want results. They want transparency. If you're like are quiet or don't, or like flinch, they're like suspect the worst, and they just like there's a lot of alignment in the way crypto and rare people think. And so all those ingredients go in to Curetopia. Curetopia launches, or at least on paper, was born about a year ago, and then launches the auction, the first on Solana, of a BioDAO in like February of this year, and that was a pretty grueling period itself. But we closed out the auction, 1.77 million at the time, with the price of SOL what it was. Price of SOL is still higher than what it was then, but lower than what it just had been. So, we've also experienced of like, well, my bank account, it's like magically growing. Oh shit, it's magically decreasing. Oh my
volatility,
God.
Right? That's crypto for you.
That's vol. So learning that the hard way, and then going through the idea maze. Ultimately, we just talked about why Curetopia should exist, all the pain points, But when I started it and had a roadmap for Curetopia, we had funds available starting in the spring, and what we're going to do, a lot of ideas. And, honestly, we spent all this time going through the idea maze, just totally natural, totally fine. And, hopefully I'm learning faster and faster. This is my third, company, and hopefully I'm better at this each time.
You are. You only get better.
So hopefully I've gone through the idea maze the best way one could navigate it. And if anyone else had tried to go through it, they'd be kind of where I am. And there's been some frustration along there. One frustration for sure was underestimating the fact that essentially the rare disease world and the crypto world have no overlap. They have overlap in like kindred spirits, but in real world people, physical social graphs, like there's no connections. It's kind of like red America, blue America. So, and that, not that they hate each other. I don't think rare and crypto hate each other. They don't know about each other. They don't know about each other. So I realized quickly that you can't just sort of expect there to be some magical, communion happening. And so there were some ideas that we tried with Curetopia that didn't stick at all, but that's like any startup. And then, we invested in a platform of screening approaches that had already been de-risked by my first company, Perlara. So we generated a data set in kind of record time, record cost efficiency that we think has longevity potential. And then we had this other insight in the idea maze that also had to do with longevity, actually. And that was, really understanding that the rare disease world and the longevity world are kind of, not two sides of the same coin. That's an imperfect metaphor, but that there were these linkages between, rare diseases and longevity, that the road to longevity may be paved with treatments and cures to rare diseases. That concept kind of kept getting validated in the real world. And, we developed this ARS pipeline of genes that are involved in protein homeostasis, protein balance, protein health in cells over time. And we think are a bunch of really interesting mechanisms that should have health span extending effects on top of, being potential treatments for rare genetic diseases. So this twofer is already kind of playing out with our ARS pipeline, which Curetopia wholly owns. And we got to see where we're going to package it up and send it next. And then we did this very serendipitous experiment with Pump Science and launched a coin called Raptor. And, that was originally based on research into, rapamycin that I started a long time ago. And now we're seeing again, what might have initially been just a rare disease opportunity, all of a sudden looks like it could be something that is about performance enhancing. So, we just did the idea maze and came up on some stuff that have, things that are sticking. And now we're going to try to double down.
Totally. And what I love about what you're describing is this sort of transition of, we had an initial hypothesis. we thought, okay, rare is actually a good thesis because it's underfunded, and we might actually find something in there that could have market value. And you had your initial V1 hypotheses when we were first putting Curetopia together, and now 9 months later, you have all this wealth of data that says, actually, no, 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 there really is something in here. And with each passing experiment, we kind of like refine and forge the hammer, so to speak, to actually figure out, okay, where are we going to take this? And that your entire journey there was like done, funded by crypto, but then also with the crypto community kind of along the way. And when I think about a parallel universe, I'm seeing one where you actually don't venture out on this. There's no funding support then for rare genetic diseases. The projects that you're working on not only don't have the opportunity to support these individual families that suffer from some rare genetic disease, but you may not even stumble into what maybe some early data is showing, that perhaps there are some even outside of rare performance enhancing opportunities that you could pursue, and what that path then leads you down for a future for your own personal research or commercialization that you kind of want to take down. I think to me the beauty of the story there is this is research that otherwise would not have gotten funding, and is now kind of creating a cornucopia of different potential avenues. And we're just at the beginning. We're only 9 months in discovering where all those different paths could lead.
Totally. Well said.
Cool. I think maybe I want to ask one more question, and then I know we have some questions here in the comments. So if anyone has any questions, please drop them in. We'll get to answer as many of them as we possibly can. But Ethan, for those folks who are at home, kind of on the fence, they're not sure if this is for them or not, they're not sure if they should do it, do you have any advice for folks that are, DeSci curious, but not yet DeSci pilled like you are?
I mean, you have to be hungry enough. You have to want it. You have to be desperate enough, maybe. You have to, I think you just have to be willing to try something that you maybe never tried before. But if you're a good scientist, there's a lot of established protocols, things that I figured out doing a crowdfund at the scale of 25,000. A lot of those exact principles turned to work out when I was raising at the, 1 to 2 million scale, it turned out, so, and in fact, the last 5 minutes of the Curetopia, the Cures auction, like every second there was a $25,000 transaction for minutes, right? So like what took 2 months in 2012 in terms of capital raised, then was compressed down to essentially a second. But It was not just a random second. It was a very well-timed second. It was a second preceding a deadline that everyone had been drilled into their head when it was coming. So, it's a testament to, if you're willing to do the experiment, like if you're starting your postdoc from your grad school, you're probably changing areas, right? At least that's conventional wisdom. So, you're learning in the beginning, it's a lot of ramp up time, learning new experiments, learning new techniques, shit you never done before. And if you were just scared, or just like, no, I'm only gonna do the assays that I know well, then obviously you're gonna be limited in the scope of your science, your questions. So, funding is no different. You just learn and you get in academia, you just there is a kind of monoculture of funding. There's only one way to get it. You write grants. So you've never seen another way work. The rare lab has seen it if they get largesse from a donor, because
Sure.
your David Liu's lab or your Bob Langer's lab, and they're not just cranking out R01s. They figured out how to play at a different level. But most scientists don't. Trainees aren't in those kind of labs, so they don't know that. But if they're willing to just think about raising, or taking an idea or even proto IP and kind of using this internet capital market formation step where you're trading, spending a lot of hours alone writing, you're trading that for maybe spending, minutes or an hour a day, kind of constantly marketing, but it's like, you're talking about your science basically, but
Absolutely.
but not just reading aloud your written grant application, but giving a new voice to these ideas and presenting them in a way that you've never done before. So if you're willing to kind of, realize that you're trading, you're kind of doing fundraising a little bit all the time when you're in internet capital markets, versus, you know, oh, I got to write these grants and I end up being out of commission for a week or two because I'm spending 12-hour, 16-hour days like banging out a fucking document and worrying about the margins and the font. And it's just like, are you fucking kidding me? So if you want to trade that life, and then it's like, oh, I just got the grants in and I'm going to have 2 weeks before I have to do it all over again. And it's just like, you know, trade that world for, you know, this internet capital market, you know, financing world, and see where it goes. And some people will end up being naturals. And the people who are all-stars in the TradSci world may flame out in this world. Or some may end up being crossover hits because they may end up having a lot of the same skill set that translates. But, you know, I think you just have to be like, if you want to keep your science going, you have to find a way. If you're hungry enough, then you'll take on this discomfort and risk of trying this new thing. And, you know, because crypto has all this negative valence and other shit, and academics are kind of sort of Marxist by either by osmosis or by voter registration. So, you know, you're already fighting a lot of headwinds there. I get it. But there's a ton of biotech founders who should be hungry enough. But, you know, I think they're not going to give a shit about the marketing and the crypto stuff necessarily. They're going to just be like, can I get enough dollars? And they're going to have to also change the way that they fundraise, right? They don't write, they do it by pitching and by making decks. So they trade spending hours and hours instead of writing a grant, they're making a deck and refining, polishing slides. Like, so you know, if you want to get rid of that drudgery and turn it into something more natural, organic, more, you know, not necessarily 24/7, but like you got to show up every day and market and talk about your science. Like what I've been doing with Raptor. Like, I think that's a formula. So like, I just gave everybody a fucking formula, like go off and repeat it.
I appreciate you said that. I think there's a section in there that you're like, look, scientists, you shouldn't just read out what you're kind of writing in your lab notebooks, but you should communicate what's going on here. And I think that part of the responsibility of a scientist is to teach what they know. And this reminds me of one of the questions that was asked in the chat by Jason, which was like, you know, how much transparency would do projects contain that are successful? We've seen that the more honest and transparent and communicative the projects are, the better they do. You know, you might be surprised, you might not assume that people in the crypto space care so much about the nuances of your science, but actually they do. There's a lot of really smart people out there that are themselves like nerds or geeks, and they want to get into the weeds, especially now with the access to AI tooling. The more information you can put out there, you can actually get people that are interested in synthesizing and getting into the weeds with that themselves. We've seen this happen in a lot of different communities. So communicate as much as possible, be as transparent as you feel comfortable. When in doubt, be more transparent than not. And you'll be rewarded for that because people want to get into the weeds. They want to understand, they want to learn, and they're curious. Frankly, the people who are involved in new sectors like DeSci are folks that have a bend towards curiosity and novelty anyways. And so the fact that you all are doing novel scientific research fits right into that kind of a mindset, fits right into that type of personality. And so lean into that and share whatever information it is that you have. Cool. Well, I know we've got a couple more questions, and then I've got to jump, as I'm sure you do, Ethan. Ethan, if you have to drop off, thank you so much for joining.
No, I can hang for the next.
Okay.
Until you got to go. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I will run late, but I'll just answer a couple more questions because I know we got a bunch of them from the chat. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining and for actually asking your questions. Really, really appreciate this. Again, if you want to apply, it's biotech.xyz/scientists. But all right, I'm seeing here. Yes, we'll send some copy of some of this material after. No problem. You can actually mint this IPNFT in cooperation with a university, but we've also seen a lot of scientists do this independent of a university. And frankly, because every tech transfer office at university is different, we can't just say, hey, here's like a one size that fits all. Typically, it's better to do the work independently of a university. We've seen, research scientists or professors being able to allocate some of their independent time for a project or research piece that they haven't been able to fund through university through the crypto angle. And either they go ahead and they do it through they create their own entity, do a sponsored research agreement at the university, or they find like a CRO that they go work with where they're like advising the research getting done. There's a lot of different options there. If you go ahead and apply and we'd like to work with you, we can actually give you a playbook that we've used of emails and angles of conversation with tech transfer offices as well. This is something we've dealt with a lot. The answer is yes, you can do it both and without. Each TTO is unique. Cool. How are we different from other crypto platforms like Research Hub? So Research Hub is purely for donations. We've seen the average Research Hub project only get in the low 4 figures worth of capital. Here you're actually getting to share and sell a piece of your IP, and so the upside potential is way higher. And as a result, the capital that can be raised is way higher. As I showed earlier in the presentation, maybe you saw it, maybe you didn't. We've actually structured 3 different mechanisms to bring capital to the scientist. One is that upfront raise. The second is the milestone-based funding unlock, and the third is the continuous funding from trading fees. So this is a triple threat that allows you to continue to bring in more and more capital as your project continues to grab more attention and make more research progress. And so that is very different than the one-time 4-figure donation that you can get from something like Research Hub. We love Research Hub. We work with them all the time, but these are 2 very different styles of projects. Speaking of which, there's going to be a conference in San Francisco December 4th called SciCon. If you're interested, I'll be there in person. Happy to chat with you guys there. We're also hosting a DeSci Abu Dhabi conference on December the 10th or 11th in Abu Dhabi. Every single year, we do a bunch of different DeSci conferences. As Ethan mentioned, he was there at DeSci Berlin in 2024. So you can find us all across the globe. We have conferences in Boston, San Francisco, Berlin, New York, so on and so forth. Just Google DeSci in the name of your city, and you'll probably find something there. Cool. Yes, we help projects list on decentralized exchanges, also known as DEXs. Actually, this is part of the service that we provide. So we have a programmatic function that would take the tokens that are generated and then sold to the market, and we reserve some amount of them. I believe it's 20%, that automatically go into what's called a liquidity pool for decentralized exchange. And that allows the market to come in and buy and sell your token. And that's how we get that 1% fee. And then also that's how the price would appreciate as you continue to share scientific updates. This is all things that we take care of for you. You do not have to worry about it all. Like I mentioned, we've done this for over 60 projects. So we have all the playbooks. We've done this. It's our area of expertise, and we handle it for projects. Cool. Can you pursue medical research projects? Absolutely. We are a very interdisciplinary platform. As I showed earlier, we funded projects from, as Ethan is doing, rare genetic diseases to things like longevity, cryogenics, hair loss, fertility research, exploration of the quantum mechanics and how they affect biology. As long as you are an ambitious research project that has a huge potential for impact, you're a good fit. Give us an understanding of tokenomics. So we have a standard.
I do actually have to bounce though.
No worries, Ethan. Thank you so much for coming, man. Super appreciate you participating.
Peace, DeSci fam.
Cheers. Bye-bye. Okay, maybe I'll make this the last question. So we have preset tokenomics templates. Those are available on our website in our docs. And basically that just simplifies everything for everyone. We've just gone through and built out what we find to be the most effective and a balance from both the market perspective, that's participants that want to buy your token, and then to be favorable to scientists to empower them to do as much research as quickly as they possibly can. As you saw earlier in the presentation, we focus on trying to get as much capital as soon as possible, and then unlocking milestones so that way we see aligned incentives for researchers wanting to continue to update the community with new research that comes out. All right, guys, I'm officially late, so I'm going to jump, but thank you so much, everyone, for participating and for being here. If you have any other questions, feel free to send them over to us on Twitter, YouTube, whatever platform you're joining in on. Don't forget to apply if you're interested in this. That's bio.xyz/scientists. And we wish you all the best. Keep on being interested in science. Thanks, everyone. Cheers.